Good morning, everybody. It's early, people. Way to go. I was like, I'll just start it and then get ready, and here are people. I'm just going to keep doing my thing over here and admitting people, but I just want to note that the city of Amity is rocking it right now.
I'm going to go ahead and leave my double screen.
This is your friendly reminder to mute yourself unless you are speaking. And Mayor Hill, welcome back from exotic locales.
Had a great time, Casey. 80 degrees almost every day. Beautiful beaches.
Oh my.
History, United States history, Confederate history down in Charleston, the whole 9 yards.
Very nice. Well, welcome back.
Casey, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Rochelle. but now I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. I haven't used Zoom on a phone too much, so this is a little bit different than on your computer or laptop.
Right. Well, keep your camera off so that we don't get motion sick while we're all following you around.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm sitting down now. Sorry about that.
We can't actually see you, so.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, I'm gonna take a call before we get going too. All right, everybody, we're going to give it a few more minutes before we get started. So thank you all for being here, and just pretend like I'm not here yet and you're going about your work, and we'll talk in a moment.
Mr. Dietz, you're back.
I am. So are you, I see.
Yeah. How was your time away?
Good. How was yours?
Oh, we had a great time.
How you doing, Preston?
He's looking for the mute button.
Hey there, John. Good to hear from you.
How's everything going?
All transitioning with a new council. Other than that, pretty good.
Looks like it's gonna be a dry summer.
Yeah, we got our ASR got plugged here early this month. First time in like 3 years we've maxed on our storage.
Wow.
All right, folks, I'm going to give it 2 more minutes so that I'm not distracted by admitting people to the room while trying to welcome you all. So 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. And feel free to talk amongst yourselves, but remember, one at a time and be kind to each other.
Or Casey, we could just talk about you. But we need to be kind, right?
Knock, knock. Knock, knock.
Thomas, everybody's afraid to say who's there because they'd have to answer it.
EPA.
EPA who?
EPA's here. Your mercury levels are too high in your water.
That's fine because everybody says you can't drink Amity water anyways.
Mayor.
That is just what I hear from everybody in town. Too much chlorine. It's not good water. Even though I drink it and have drank it for years.
All right, since the pace of admitting people has slowed the modern problems we have, I want to get us started. Welcome to the first meeting of the Yamhill County Water Task Force for, I think we're in 2021 right now. I'm going to go through our agenda and some housekeeping and Zoom etiquette in case you've forgotten. And then we're going to go on to the agenda. And I'm going to try to keep admitting people as we go. Because there are 44 of us, including some that are only numbers, hopefully they're radio call signs. I'm not going to do introductions now, but we'll do them at the end if there's time. So first of all, remember to mute yourself, please, and then unmute when you want to talk. The other thing I would ask you to do is to raise your digital hand if you do want to say something. Another thing I would love to have you do is consider turning off your camera, just because there are 46 people here, and it can get pretty distracting having everybody's camera on. I want to focus this on the folks who are most affected by each of the agenda items. So if you're like, well, I'm just going to listen to this one, feel free to turn your camera off for now. Thank you all, though, for joining us. So the first thing we're going to talk about is water and sewer projects that are urgently needed in your area. So that would be for cities, but also for these rural organized water systems and sewer systems. So if you're part of an organization that has a water challenge, but beyond just an individual, I want you to also share your voice right now in this one. The second agenda item will be to talk about the mercury total maximum daily loads, new regulations coming from Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. And Nancy Gramlich will join us at 11 for that. So we have an hour to talk about water and sewer projects. And then we have 45 minutes or so to talk about the total maximum daily load for mercury. And then what we'll do is go through a round table. Anybody who wants to share in answer to the question, what's the water issue of most concern to you in our county? And then we'll wrap up and I'll schedule our next water task force meeting. So thank you all very much for joining us today. So the first question I want folks to ask or to answer is, what's the most urgently, the urgent water project in your jurisdiction? And what does it cost? Do you have an estimate for that? Give us a quick explanation of the project and what it'll entail. My hope is that I'll get your permission to submit a combined request to our Senate delegation for their next round of funding, their earmark funding. The second component of that is that the list that I'm going to be putting together will also go before the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners as part of our discussion of American Rescue Plan funding, the direct allocation that we're getting. So my goal for our conversation today is to find out exactly what the most urgent project is for your jurisdiction, the cost of it, and how we can work together to get these built. I feel like these are some of the most, water and sewer projects in your jurisdictions are some of the most important work that we need to do because they're so costly and they impact so many of us. All right, and I apologize, I'm still admitting people too. So I'm not gonna call on you, but there's a lot of cities here with a lot of mayors, a lot of water managers, and a lot of city managers. And so I'm just gonna start taking notes. Feel free to raise your digital hand or unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and tell me about the system and what your need is. And I might just start with Rochelle Roden, and I believe she has a staff member here on the water side of things as well. And then we'll get started. Rochelle, what's the water project most urgent in your community?
Currently, Dayton has a utility bridge that supports our water and our sewer. So it brings our water in from our springs and it takes our sewer out to our sewer ponds. It is a $4.5 million project. The bridge is also, it's called the footbridge around town. So it actually connects downtown Dayton to the RV park. And so there's obviously a bridge on top of that for people to walk on. So we've had that shut down for 2 years. Just because of woodpecker damage in the A-frames of the bridge. We just finished our RFP for engineering because it's over $1 million in engineering. And so we've just got that done and we have Dowell on board to start designing and planning and working on permitting. So that's the biggest one at this point.
Awesome, thank you very much, Rochelle. You have a couple other folks here, do they want to add anything more?
I have Steve Sagmiller here. He is our public works director, and also Elizabeth Sagmiller. The city has hired her as a consultant to do our TDML implementation plan. Sorry, I can't talk this morning.
Perfect. That's okay. Thank you. Oh, do they want to add anything?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't believe so at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's a really good start. I mean, I knew about this one, but thank you for the details. Thank you, Rochelle. Kenna West, City Manager for the City of Willamina. It's good to see you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I want to know why Rochelle gets to go first. Come on, geesh. At least Amity should have gone first. They're an A.
I'm on vacation and I'm in California. That's why I got to go first.
Oh, okay. All right, you get it this time.
There are so many reasons, Kenna.
So we actually we have a multi-layered matter going on right now. Willamina is one of the last cities that really has a lot of land to build. And thanks to the Yamhill County Commissioners, we are changing, we received a grant to do some changes to our development code, which is going to allow us to increase housing, particularly missing middle housing. And that is going to increase folks moving here. So in order to have those folks move here and provide housing, we are going to have to increase our capacity, increase our lines. That flows right into what we have as an urgent need, which is the movement of our intake, which has been fouled over a number of years due to a gravel bar that's migrating on top of it. We actually had an emergency situation 2 years ago that Business Oregon saved us by giving us a grant. So that has to be moved downstream out of the gravel bar's way. And then we have to install new line. We also have to install new line across to our school. That's about a $6.2 million project. We have granting for the design. We're at 30% design and we need, another $5.7 million in order to get that completed. That project would open up more housing. It would open up more affordable housing. It will allow our school to increase in size so that our kids are able to continue to go there as we increase our housing. And it will make sure that we have water. Our engineers have told us that our intake has 2, maybe 3 years at the most before it fails. So we have to get that done within the next 2 to 3 years. I do have Jeff Brown, my Public Works Director here. Jeff, did I forget anything? Do you need to add anything? He usually hates talking, so you may not.
Oh, I know.
He hates it. He hates it.
I'm on the Road Improvement Advisory Committee with Jeff, so I know. But then when he says stuff, it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, we will come back to him. We will have time in this next hour, so I'll follow back up with him. Thank you, Kenna. Shannon Beaucaire, correct?
Correct.
New city manager for the city of Carlton. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So for the city of Carlton, the most pressing issue is upgrades to our wastewater plant. We have both hydraulic and biological capacity issues, and as a result, we've suffered numerous violations over the last few years since 2011. And so it's a number of components that have to be done all at once, which creates a $6.8 million project that we have to do. Design has already begun and is scheduled to be completed before March of next year. And we're going through the environmental review process, and construction is slated to start in June of 2022. As a result of all these significant improvements to our water as well as our wastewater plant system, our citizens have had to suffer significant increases in their water and wastewater rates. And it's getting to the point where our capacity for them to be able to shoulder this is incredibly difficult. And I also have Brian Burnham, our Public Works Director, here on the line. I don't know if he wants to speak more to the specifics about all the components that have to go into this project.
Awesome, thank you. Brian, do you want to add anything more right now, or should we come back to you at the end? All right, I don't see him unmuting himself, but we'll jump back. Oh, Brian, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't have anything to add at this time. That was a good opening presentation there. So no, I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. And then one thing I should have mentioned, but we can come back to it, is if there are phases to the project. So if there's a first phase and you know the cost, and a second phase and you know the cost. And because Jody Christensen has just turned on her camera, I'm going to go to her before the 2 mayors and the tribal council member.
Thank you. Shannon, what is the gap on that 6.8 million?
I'm sorry, the gap?
Oh, yeah, is the ask 6.8, or do you have a portion of that funding secured?
The ask is 6.8.
Great, thank you. I will note, Commissioner, that I believe several of the projects that will be mentioned today are on the Regional Solutions Council of Government list. So this is helpful. I will make the updates for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jody Christensen, Regional Solutions Coordinator for the Governor. All right, Mayor Lehman from the city of Amity, welcome. You're up next.
Good morning. The city of Amity actually kind of has 2 that are on a high priority for us. They both come from our water master plan, which was completed, I believe, 2007-ish. So these are 2007 dollar amounts. The first one is going to be replacing the 8-inch transmission line that runs from our water reservoirs on the hill above Amity with a 12-inch main line. This is going to help improve by replacing asbestos cement pipe with new 12-inch ductile iron piping. The asbestos cement pipe material is known to be problematic and is nearing the end of its design life. Replacing this pipe with new 12-inch ductile iron will help increase our capacity for future demands and fire flows throughout the entire system. It's also if a line was to break, the resulting reduction in service for the city of Amity would be extremely detrimental to us. The estimated cost, and this is actually 2015 is when this master plan was made, is roughly $400,000 for that project. The next kind of second most important is replacing the 8-inch loop along Goucher Street. This improvement consists of installing an 8-inch main from Nursery Street south on Goucher and over to Oak Street, replacing a 3-inch line with a 4-inch line, and removing the old line during construction. The new pipeline will significantly increase fire flows in the area and eliminate constructive pipeline in that part of our town. We're also, with the addition of that larger line, we'll be able to install several more fire hydrants that are more user-friendly for our fire district. And the estimated cost is about $600,000, and that's 2015 dollars, of course. And I guess the most significant thing for the city of Amity is we are currently in the middle of a very large water improvement project. Like Willamina, our water intake system was not designed for the river when it was put in some years ago. And so we have since had to find the funding and raise our water rates as well significantly to be able to do several things with that water project. One, working on our water reservoirs up on the hill already, getting them back up to shape. A pretty much complete overhaul of our water filter train system out at our treatment facility, and then moving the water reservoir. That project is about 3/4 of the way completed. Really the only things we have left is actually getting to work on moving the water intake and some continued upgrades at our treatment facility. The big thing when it comes to funding is because the city of Amity took that project on its own, we do not really have any leeway as far as we're going to have to be looking for any future water projects pretty much as 100% grant with a little bit of funding that the city of Amity can come up with, because with the limited number of ratepayers we have, if we get too much more debt, we will not be able to ever repay what we borrow. So we're kind of in that sticky little bit of situation, but those are the two projects that the city of Amity is going to be needing the most help with. We do have some ARPA funds coming, and because there was some project cost overruns with our water improvement project, we are going to use some of those ARPA funds already in the first drop of money to complete a portion of the project that we just had to take and scrap because we just simply could not afford it. So yeah, any further help from anywhere else would be greatly appreciated for the city of Amity and its residents to continue with this water improvement.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mayor. It's all very helpful, especially the different ones. Does anybody else do you want to have anybody else from the city of Amity add anything, since you're well represented here today?
If I believe Councilor King is on, council president, and I believe the city administrator is on. If either of them would like to add anything, by all means, go ahead.
Thank you, Ryan, Mayor Lehman. I would just add that in addition to the two main projects that he highlighted, in that water master plan, we have $1.8 million in projects which are solely needed line replacements and getting the adequate number of fire hydrants. So those aren't top priority when we needed to pick out two, but that's also something that we are close to a decade behind. And at this point, we've just had to prioritize.
Okay, great. So that's like the water, the transmission line, and then the loop. And then as you go further down the list, there's another 1.8 of additional priorities, but those were the highest ones.
Yeah,
Mayor's
just
nodding,
sending.
All right, great. That's super helpful. Thank you. Thank you, City of Amity. If you have more stuff to add, please do so. We'll make sure we get through everybody though first. And it looks like Mayor Scott Hill from the City of McMinnville is the next one with his hand raised.
Thank you, Commissioner, and those on the line. I think we'll just have an opportunity to update ourselves, and I've got two of our experts on the line. Leland from wastewater, and we've got a number of line replacements going on right now and upgrades to our wastewater and sewer. So Leland can update us from that perspective, he would. And then we've got from Mac Water and Light, we've got John Dietz, and we've got James from a water perspective. We've got some long-term regional projects that we're looking at and being able to tap into the Willamette River and provide water from a secondary source outside of the Nestucca and our reservoirs up in the mountains. So I'll go ahead, Leland, if you'd like just to update from a city perspective, and then James or John from Mac Water and Light, it lets people know kind of where we're at and where we're sitting.
All right, good morning. For wastewater services here in McMinnville, we presently have a solids handling plan that we were going to implement and update our systems out here. But initially it was just going to be a storage tank for our solid system, but it turned into a $20 million project instead of a $10 million project. So we are presently, we've got the what was it? The project definition report was done after going through with Jacobs Engineering, and we're presently waiting to start the actual design process until we can clarify that the funding we have set aside for this will work with our master plan and financial plan. So presently, we were slated and ready to pay for an $8 million project, but when it turned to 20, it kind of made things kind of take a break, and we're going to be upgrading our master plan this next fiscal year just to make sure that this falls in line with everything we have in scope for that. So that is one of our biggest tasks ahead right now. And then of course, with the Mercury TMDL, we presently do not have a stormwater fund for McMinnville. And so we're going to be having to get a fund started, and that is going to be all an unfunded source at this time. So that's where we're at with wastewater, unless Eric Grimstad has anything to add to that.
Nothing to add, Lee. That was a good summary. Thanks.
Yeah, and Lee, that's a really good reminder that funding for these kinds of projects, there is the TMDL, becoming compliant with it. So thank you for adding that. Right, John Dietz is with us too. John, are you next for the city or for Mac Water and Light? Apologies.
I guess I'll go next. So, we've been working on regional, but we probably have close to $100 million in projects. But probably our top priority right now is one of our transmission mains. There's 54,000 feet of that pipe. We've replaced about 9,000. So we actually have in our budget next year to start engineering and design on the entire 45,000 feet that's remaining. But our estimates are somewhere around $40 million to replace that. And that is actually our biggest constraint in our system. The last time we did a flow study, we were at about 15 million gallons, and our peak daily demand can run as high as 13 million gallons a day. So we're getting close to our peak. So part of the issue there is that we have some very high points in that system, but we also have some 14-inch AC and some steel pipe that was installed in the 1940s. So that is becoming a priority. And then the second priority will be our long-term resiliency and a second water source, which I know Lafayette is also engaged with us on that as well.
Great, thank you very much, John.
And John, John, can I ask you to address one other piece that relates to the city? We've got quite a bit of buildable property up in the West Hills that are above our flow capacity, and thus we're not able to build up there until we come up with a pump station. And again, it's it's the elevation's high, there's slopes, there's all kinds of pieces with that. But could you address that also, what the cost might look? And I don't know that it's a top priority because of the cost, but it does prevent us from building in buildable areas that we have within the UGB.
Yeah, that's about 10 to 12 million dollars. And that would be what we call zone 2. Right now, I would say that, you know, with what is in the city limits, that serves about 400 lots if we had that built, so roughly.
Great, that's super helpful. Thank you, John. Is there anybody else from the city of McMinnville who wanted to add? All right, great. I'm looking through the list to remind myself, my next is I'm seeing Preston from the city of Lafayette. Preston, would you like to go next on behalf of Lafayette?
Sure, Commissioner Kula, thank you for that. So the most important wastewater project that we have urgent for the city is a second reservoir. We currently have one 500,000 gallon reservoir for a city of 4,300 people. It's not adequate for a number of reasons. Operationally, we only have a few hours really to a 500,000 gallon reservoir, a few hours of fire flow or to meet demand before we've run out, and then we've got to issue boil water notices. So beyond operations, all the operational requirements, it provides needed storage. Obviously, the few hours is not enough. The EPA standard is 3 days. And most of our water sources come from across the Yamhill River. And if there is the big one or close to it, we lose connection to those sources. So a second reservoir is really critical for us just to be resilient in that regard. So a second water reservoir is our biggest priority. The total cost of that, including all the soft costs, is close to $2.5 million. We don't have any money set aside for that right now. We just completed several $1 million of improvements the last few years. John with Mike Water and Light mentioned, together with McMinnville, we've invested in the first infrastructure into the regional water treatment system. So we're pretty proud of that, and we're now linked with the cities of Dayton and McMinnville. So right now, the second reservoir is our critical project. We're the fastest growing city in Yamhill County, and we've got to just take care of that last major piece, this second reservoir, and we'll be set to continue to be the fastest growing city in Yamhill County in the future.
Thank you, Preston. Is there anybody else from the city that you want to have add to that?
I'm all you got today, Casey.
That sounds good. It's enough. It's enough, Diane. I do want to note that it sounds like there's a little bit of a competition here for who can get the most housing in. So thank you, I think, for that. Kenna, I think, probably is going to want to be the highest rate per number of existing residents or something like that. I'm sure she'll win that one. Okay, thank you very much. I'm trying to think of, oh, yeah, Kenna says thumbs up on that one. I know you're going to win in the end. Do we have somebody from the city of Yamhill with us? All right, is it awkward enough silence? All right, we're gonna go on from City of Yamhill, and I'll reach out to Mayor Potter separately on this one. Do we have somebody from the City of Dundee with us today? Okay, then we're heading east. We're going to the City of Newburgh, and I know that we have some representatives here. Karin, are you gonna be the one to speak first on this?
Yeah, I was good.
Or
This is
Russ,
Russ
okay.
Thomas. I'm the
Perfect.
Public Works Director for the City of Newburgh. We've got a lot of projects in our capital improvement program. We've just updated our water and wastewater master plans to address the House Bill 2001 issues. We've got some other projects to serve a second service level, our level 2. Replacement of a booster pump station and improvements to provide additional service, a redundant water supply, a second water source, and replacement of a lot of lines as well that's needed. And Karin is our city engineer and the keeper of our capital improvement program, and she's got the projects and numbers for you. Karin.
Awesome, thank you, Brad.
So yeah, kind of the top 2 priorities for the city is a redundant water supply source. Currently, we have one source, and if something was to happen to that source, we would be without water. So we are actively working on it. We've gone through 2 phases. We're in phase 3, which is leading up to preliminary engineering, those types of things. And we've got about $3 million needed for that work. And until we know for sure, the goal is to get a right on the river. But until we know for sure, there is one intake that we are looking at, but we don't know if it's adequate for our needs. So until we know that for sure, we won't know for sure a cost on that. But that'll be number 1 priority. The other priority, as Russ noted, is that we've gone through our seismic resiliency. And probably the next priority is our water treatment plant needs about $6 million worth of upgrades in order to survive a Cascadia event. So those would be our 2 main projects.
Great, thank you, Karin. And do you have any wastewater side particular priorities?
No, we have, I mean, we're doing a lot of projects on the wastewater side, but I don't know that we have anything that is a priority that we aren't covering through our just a regular rates and STCs at this point.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Does the City of Sheridan, I apologize, I'm like looking down the list. Does the City of Sheridan have anybody who would like to add anything?
Hi, can you see me, Casey?
I can. Oh yeah.
Hi.
Thank you.
So I'm Kai Cottom. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Sheridan. We have a few projects on the books right now. We have a roughly a $4 million gravity main sewer project with a sponsorship option through the SRF loan through DQ. We also have a feasibility study coming up, hopefully in the next budget year. That's $175,000 for a treatment study for a wastewater facility. And our master plan indicates that that project's coming in at about 10 million in, sorry about that, in 2013 monies. And then on the water side, we need to update our 2002 water master plan. And that estimate's about 250,000 on the water side.
All right, thank you, Kai. I needed to write it down, thus the awkward pause. And then I remember that Frank Sheridan mentioned to me at some point that you have the ability to have a second water treatment plant, or there's 2 water sources and only one of them has a water treatment plant. What's the status of that? Would that be part of a master plan update?
Yeah, that would be part of the master plan update, and some of those facilities are already built. So I mean, the obvious assumption is that the new master plan will come to the same findings that the first one did, that plant still needs to be built. And we do have we've actually had someone tie up about 80 acres inside the UGB, which is making me a little nervous. If they can actually develop that. I'm not sure what the absorption rate is for Sheridan, but we're close enough to McMinnville that they might be able to build 100+ houses a year out there. So
I was just thinking in my head, is there gonna be a part of the race for the housing winner is in Sheridan, and there you go.
our STCs are significantly lower than our partners in the area.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. Is there anything else you want to add to that? I've got those notes here.
No, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us. And then I want to note that we have at least two members of the Confederate Tribe of Grand Ronde with us at the council. So if one of those, there's Councillor George and Councillor Langley. If one of you would like to add too, it's really wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, good morning, Casey, and everybody on the call. We really appreciate being included. Michael and I have conferred, and he deferred to me to start off, and he'll fill in anything I miss. So we really appreciate just being part of this conversation, right? We're all, well, relative to major population centers in Oregon, small communities who don't have the resources they need to do the things we need to do in terms of infrastructure. So I tremendously appreciate you, Casey, bringing everybody together to talk about our mutual needs and see if there's any opportunities for us to help each other out. So with that said, the tribe is still in the process of finalizing the update to, well, really our first community development plan. And so that's going to take a little while before that is wrapped up. However, from everything we've heard and everything that's been discussed, we know that there is a huge demand from our tribal members to want to return home on the reservation. And we also know that every single housing waiting list we have has lots and lots of tribal members who are waiting sometimes up to 3 years to get an opportunity to move into tribal housing. And I think most of you know we have everything from elders housing to low income housing to market rate housing. And we're working right now on our first on-reservation home ownership program, which is in planning phases. And what we hear from tribal members is they want to be able to move home. And so as tribal council, it's going to be one of our jobs to reduce these waiting lists and increase opportunities. In addition, you folks know we have a fair amount of jobs out there. And so workforce housing is something that's really being discussed in the planning phases for the first time out there. We have about 1,000, well, we have about 1,400 at least jobs right now. Sometimes that's significantly higher. And if we want people to be able to work there, we can't expect everybody to commute from Salem or other places. So the bottom line is Grand Ronde is going to need to be developing a lot of housing. So that was my question in terms of who's going to win the race for the most houses built. What's the time frame we're talking about? So that's going to be really key, because depending on the time frame we're talking about, I think we could be in the competition. So with that said, well, we don't have quite as far, we're not down the planning road quite as far as some of our other communities. We do know that we are going to need to be working with the Grand Ronde Water Association and our partners in Polk and Yamhill counties to plan all this and to be in discussion with our county partners and Grand Ronde Water Association about this. We also know that the kind of increase in water we're going to need to service this kind of increase in housing is going to be a very significant investment in infrastructure. So we're not too far down that road yet, but it is not unreasonable to expect that, given the amount of infrastructure that would be required to support the kind of housing that we're talking about, it would be realistic to expect that this would be somewhere between an $8 and $10 million investment, that would need to be worked out with Grand Ronde Water Association and other folks as well. So that's kind of a first phase of orientation. Wastewater is not our biggest issue for right now. The casino has its own treatment plant, and it has, we've invested in the ability to deal with different flows over there. We have 2 plants over in our housing now that have a fair amount of, capacity that can be brought online. So I would say that planning for these drinking water needs is our biggest priority at this time. And Michael, please feel free to add anything you think of.
No, I think that was well covered. This is really my first time listening in, and Kathleen is our water person representative on council. We all kind of have our specialties and our niches, and she's definitely ours. But for me, it's really important also to see what's going on in our local communities, because we all know how interconnected, especially water, the issues around water is. And as we are going to see some money from the Biden's plan come through, I think there's opportunities even more so for communities maybe to come together and leverage those. So important for me to listen, see what's going on here locally, and see what other challenges people have. But one of the good things, and Kathleen touched on it, is we actually built our wastewater treatments. A lot of times we don't build it to the scale that we should expect in the future, and we actually have a lot of capacity there. So that's one of the good things that normally doesn't happen. And so I really feel for those communities that are struggling with that right now, because it's huge, and the infrastructure around it too. It's a big expense. So hopefully, with partly Casey's work, thank you for all this work, and from the federal government, we can get some things done this coming year.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's super helpful to hear that you are going to win the absolute number race. But I still think that Kennet and the city of Willamina might meet the per capita new homes.
Okay, we'll see. How about a percentage though? I mean, if you're considering percentage growth, anyway, maybe another call, maybe a subcommittee. That's right.
Definitely. And yes. Yeah, thank you. And thanks everybody for keeping the good business. It's funny, I was actually going to send an email to Stacy Jacobson, and she has turned her camera on. So, but I also want to note that there are folks here who are part of rural water associations, and then we've got some county associated folks that I want to make sure we get to as well. But with that, Stacy, and can you introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Casey. My name is Stacy Jacobson. I'm Senator Merkley's field rep for Yamhill County and a few others. And I was just actually following up with a question for the tribes. I missed the estimated cost for the drinking water.
Hi there, Stacy. So glad you could join us. So this is a very early, very rough estimate. We are not actually in the active planning phase yet. But again, just working with our engineers and talking to them about the amount of infrastructure likely to be necessary for the expanded housing that we're looking at. The early estimate is that it would need to be investment between $8 and $10 million.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, you bet.
And then Stacy, while you're on the camera, so there is an earmark request. Do you have more information? In theory, it's due by Friday, and it's congressionally directed spending, but do you have more guidance on it yet?
We do, and so the subcommittee released guidance on Friday, and we are trying to boil that down into something that's digestible and readable for humans. And we're working on that right now and hoping to have that by the end of the day. We were hoping to have it over the weekend. It's just a lot. And I guess just briefly on CDs, we're calling them CDs, but it's going to be a nationally competitive process. Basically, the idea is instead of submitting for a grant, you submit to Congress for a direct appropriation. There's going to be a ton of competition, and we just want to make sure that expectations are low. Since you all have worked with the federal government for a long time here, your expectations are probably pretty low already, so that's good. I'm here to help as much as I can. We're learning on as we go, and my hope is to get an email update out to everybody with that updated guidance today. And as soon as I have it, you will have it. I promise you that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stacy. I'd just like to note that getting together, getting these numbers out here is super helpful for congressionally directed spending, but it's also helpful for the governor's office, our legislators, and for our own internal work. So, but with that, we have Fritz Graham as well. His turn on his camera. Fritz, do you want to do a quick introduction and then add?
Yeah, Fritz Graham with U.S. Senator Ron Wyden's office. I'm in the Salem field office, have 7 counties, including Yamhill, just like Stacy. And I know it's frustrating when we've been waiting for this guidance, and then we kind of got it on Friday, and and we want to get it out as quickly as possible, but we also are trying to make it as easy and accessible as possible. So one of the things that I've heard we're doing is that when you go to the portal, you have to go to the portal, you have to set up an account. When you go to it, we're trying to link up. There's additional questions, and each committee has different questions, and we're trying to link up as much of that information as possible. And Senator White and Senator Merkley's office is working together to get that done, so that you'll go there and you don't have to, fiddle around with a lot of stuff. It's just right there. I know that, and I know that for water projects, there's a lot of questions. They want to make sure that these are viable in the process, have support, etc. So, I mean, they've got more questions than a Homeland Security subcommittee request. So, just wanted to put that out there.
All right, thank you, Fritz. And are you open for questions, both of you, as people go through this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay,
If we have answers, I mean, yeah, we go over to questions.
Yeah.
I'll just
And-
reiterate too, it's really helpful, like regardless of who gets, who is able to get a CD through this process, like this, getting to hear all of these projects is really helpful for us in general. I know the senators are,
Yep.
prioritizing rural water, how we address this. If you look, it's a little scary because you look at, McMinnville, you have these big projects, and you expand that to Yamhill County, you got a lot of projects. Oregon, the entire country, we're really behind in water infrastructure, so there's a lot of need. So thankfully we have this process, we have the American Jobs Plan coming, the ARPA money, so we're just hoping to keep ticking away at this giant need.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good, thank you for adding the perspective, but also the, we're gonna keep working on these. And I hopefully both of you have heard, which I have heard, is further costs or further projects are going to really hit ratepayers hard, to the point where they can't afford it, or the cities don't have any more debt, authority. And then housing is a huge need, and it's limited by water availability or sewer availability. And then the other thing I have here is the resilience component seems to be pretty huge. I'm guessing both for earthquakes, for droughts, the whole gamut.
And can I just say one more thing and then I will be quiet, I promise. I know, we had the senator meet with a number of small rural towns of small under 10,000 communities to talk about water needs. And one of the biggest messages we were honing in on was, we need more grants. Like, loans aren't cutting it for small rural towns. It's too hard on ratepayers. It's not fair. It's inequitable. And I do think Senator Merkley has taken that to heart, and we're hoping to see some action on that. There was a hearing in front of a number of the agency secretaries where he very explicitly called out, our small rural communities in Oregon, they have to have grants. We can't do loans. So there is a push for that. What that's going to end up looking like, I don't know, but you do have people on your side.
That's great. I'm hearing that loud and clear, so I'm glad you're hearing it loud and clear. John, you have.
Can I add one more comment to that? Also, I would add the escalation in construction and material costs. Those are rising far faster than the rate of inflation. And so we're seeing that as another pressure as well.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. And then I want to, Mayor Lehman from the city of Amity has his hand raised, and then I want to go to open it up to county, because we have a couple of folks from Yamhill County Public Works here, and then I want to open up to rural water associations too, because there are some people. But Mayor.
Getting back to Amity, another thing is that the city of Amity is currently underway doing our wastewater facilities plan update. So the information I gave you is really only water related, because that's only we have documentation to back that up. But when we talked to our department, he said there's probably about $10 million in sewer upgrades that the city is going to have to undertake here at some point as well, on top of continuing to upgrade our water systems. So getting back to the federal level, it's really encouraging to see that Hopefully more grants will be coming this way as opposed to grant loan combinations, because like I said, the passing it on to the ratepayers just doesn't work all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate hearing that. I've got it noted too. Okay, we have with us, I believe we have, oh, if he's still here, maybe Director Lago from Yamhill County Public Works. Director Lago, is there any project, we are unique, maybe unique in having a sewer district, but there also are other water projects that the county is responsible for. So welcome.
Yeah, am I on? Okay, yeah, well, hearing all these sewer and water projects from all of you, I feel your pain from being the director at Seafoot River for 16 years. Same song and dance as all of you have stated out there. So it is tough to get out there. You got to make sure your rates are low, your users and all that. But it's nice not to have that here at the county, I have to admit. But we do have one sewer district that's in Cove Orchard. We will definitely need to do a capital improvement plan, capital facilities plan for that, and then set up some projects for that, even though it's pretty small. So that's all we have here at the county.
And Director Lago, can you remind me of the cost estimate on that one?
I do not have a cost estimate on the capital facilities plan. I'm trying to get some, I know I can get a grant through IFA that I'm looking at trying to get, so.
Okay, great,
All right.
thank you. And thank you for joining us. All right, and there are a number of folks here in attendance who are part of rural water associations. You know, there's Perrydale Domestic Water Association, for example. I invite you to bring your concerns and your projects up onto the screen as well. So you can raise your hand or you can turn on your screen and tell us. All right, we'll get 5 more awkward seconds before we'll move on. It looks like Catherine Jernstead has her hand raised. Catherine, why don't you open it up? And welcome.
There we go. I think I'm going now.
You are.
I'm not who you're actually asking for, and I hope once I go first, the others will kind of figure out their buttons. I'm probably at the wrong meeting, but those of us who are out in the countryside, not connected to any sort of system, have our own water issues. While people are waiting for houses in your cities, they're building them out here, and we're just not confident in our groundwater supply. Joel, Water Master, has said time and time again, we just don't have the information to do effective analysis. That would probably be a longer term, not a one-off, which is the focus of this group. So I will just end by saying, keep in mind as well, folks, we're having problems and we are obviously bottom of the list, but those people looking for houses in the urban areas are drilling wells out in the country. So thanks, Casey, for calling the meeting together.
And thank you, Catherine. Catherine Jernstead is also, I think, the president of Friends of Yamhill County right now. Is that accurate? Yes. Okay. Yes. And Catherine, I do want to note that the next follow-up meeting to this one will be specifically directed at groundwater availability, quality, and data and regulation. So I hope you will join us for that.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you again for your efforts.
And I hope that you had some encouragement in hearing from all the folks who were talking about development of housing in cities.
You read that one right.
All right, thank you for joining us and thank you for your comment. Stacy Jochimson has her hand raised as well.
Sorry, everybody, me again. Just got an email, I know. We have the guidance. The guidance is out. I have a link to it that I can send to you. I'm gonna email blast it to everyone in the world, but it's also in the OAM site. So where you go to actually make the request, there's a link to it. And I have a PDF I'm happy to share with you, Casey, if you wanted to share it with folks on the phone. Awesome, I'll email you right now. It's
Great,
only 20
thank you.
pages versus 60 pages, so pretty good.
Perfect. All right, and you promised that it was in English.
I mean, you know, it's Englishy.
Perfect. I'm so glad. Okay, thank you very much. It looks like Kenna West has her microphone unmuted. Kenna, was there anything you wanted to add?
Sorry, Casey. I was laughing at Stacy's comment.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other rural water folks out here who want to share comments, concerns, projects that they really want to see funded, even if it's not specifically a water association? And then if there are not, then we'll pause for a moment and then we'll move on to our next agenda item. All right, 15 seconds of awkward silence, I think is good enough. But before we move on, with 4 minutes to spare, before we move on to the Mercury total maximum daily load, I do want to note Jody Christensen from Regional Solutions in the governor's office is here, and she's been taking notes as well. So she has a better sense now of what rural water needs are, especially in our small cities. So Jody, thank you for joining us for this. I know you have to cut out early, but is there anything more you wanted to add?
No, thank you, Commissioner, for inviting me to this meeting. This has been extremely helpful. Several of these projects were already on our radar. The message of the day really is you're preparing for opportunity. And so in preparing for your request for the commissioner, for our federal delegation, you're also preparing yourself for the county and state programs and the upcoming infrastructure. So there's lots of different tracks of money coming into the state. The work that you're doing now, the closer you could get to the dollar amount, a phased approach, think 2-year horizon. I think that this is a really great conversation. So thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Jody. And to put a more fine point on that, if the cities who have spoken up on your water needs and the tribe can send me an email replying to the Water Task Force meeting with if there's a phased approach, as many details as you can give for a lay reader and the cost estimate for the different pieces of it, I will compile those specifically for our Yamhill County American Rescue Plan direct allocations. So we have money. The commissioners have committed to looking at water projects and helping fund them as much as we can. And we want to be the last dollar. So we hope we can leverage state and federal dollars for that. All right, thank you all. Are there any last thoughts before we move on to item 2 on the agenda? All right, great. Thank you very much, everybody. And with that, I'd like to move on to Mercury total maximum daily loads, which was a new thing to me, and we'll hopefully learn a lot more about it in the next few minutes. I'm pleased to welcome Nancy Gramlich, who is the Willamette Basin Coordinator for Watersheds and Stormwater for Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. And Nancy has a presentation that she's going to go through. And hopefully we can get it up on the screen. So welcome, Nancy. You're welcome to do your own introduction, but I'm pleased to have you here today.
Thank you for the invite. So you're sharing my screen? Should I just share screen and I should be able to?
You should be able to share. I gave you permission, I think.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
I can see it, Nancy.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. I want to say thank you, Casey, for inviting me, actually. You missed out on the last week, so I'm more than glad to kind of take some of these slides and present them to everyone. Some of you in the audience may have already seen these. Again, the focus for me is on the non-point source, and I'll get to that in more detail. And then new designated management agencies, which would be cities and counties, and then responsible persons in Yamhill County, because Yamhill County is new to this, with some exceptions. Okay, so again, this slide deck is from, there's a little bit of changes to it, but it's from the last week's workshop. There's one tomorrow, and I'll get to that. I'm just gonna go real brief. That's my role here tonight, not to get too into the weeds. What is the Mercury TMDL? And then what are some of the responsibilities or highlights that can be anticipated? So the Federal Clean Water Act establishes the basic framework for regulating discharges to surface waters. So DEQ adopts the water quality standards. We collect data, we assess it against those standards. And then if they don't meet those standards, they get identified as impaired. And then by the Clean Water Act, we're required to develop what we call total maximum daily loads for impaired water bodies. So mercury in the environment is naturally occurring element, and it persists in the environment. It becomes highly toxic to humans when converted to organic forms or methyl mercury through microbial processes in the water column or in the water body sediments. Methyl mercury becomes more concentrated up the ecological food chain, where it can be found in high concentrations in fish tissue. So the objective of the mercury TMDL is to meet the fish tissue methyl mercury criterion. Currently, the Oregon Health Authority has fish consumption advisories for resident fish. Among those who rely on the Willamette Basin fish and shellfish as a food source are immigrant and low-income communities and other historically marginalized communities. With the TMDL over time, reducing mercury inputs results in lower concentrations of methyl mercury, thus reducing the exposure to people when they eat the fish. And to give a little background on the mercury, we have a mercury in place from 2006. The standard was 0.3 milligrams per kilogram of methyl mercury. In October 2011, DEQ came up with a more stringent fish tissue criterion of 0.04, which is more protective and allows Oregonians to safely consume higher amounts of fish. In 2012, there was a lawsuit, and the US District Court ruled that DEQ and EPA needed to revise the 2006 mercury TMDL to be equivalent to the 2011. And then in February, later in 2020, it was issued. Just to give you some background on what a TMDL is, it's basically a desktop analysis that uses modeling and water quality data to look at what the pollution sources are contributing to the impairment, looks at how much is too much of a load in the water body, how much can it take so it can meet the water quality standard, and then it breaks that out and it allocates it to certain pollutant sources. And I'll get into more detail about that. And then every TMDL has a margin of safety, which is what I like to call a conservative assumption. So like for pike minnow, there's a higher reduction needed to protect the fish because it accumulates mercury more efficiently than a bass, which is lower. So we go with the more protective one, which is higher for the pike minnow. Another way to look at a TMDL is you have up on the top the excess load, too much mercury, the point sources, which are, say, municipal wastewater treatment plants, cities and counties with municipal stormwater permits, who are required to protect stormwater by permit. in industry and urban development. And then you have the non-point, which is anything that doesn't have a permit, such as agriculture, construction that doesn't require a permit, and urban living. And there's that margin of safety in the river there down at the bottom. I'm not going to go into detail on this slide because I did talk about it earlier, but I would like to say this is a unique TMDL because it's the first TMDL that we issued back in November 2019 that EPA did not approve. And as a result, they had to issue the TMDL. So with every TMDL, by Oregon administrative rule, we're required to issue a water quality management plan, which is really a cleanup plan for the water. Every TMDL that's issued must provide for reasonable assurance by rule. And then we have an accountability framework that gets us to that reasonable assurance. So we look at the reduction strategies. We look at who has jurisdiction to control pollutants getting into the water. We give timelines and targets for folks that have to implement measures on the ground to improve water. DEQ has to approve the plans, and we monitor those throughout. And then we also have to take action if someone fails to implement. And then DEQ is kind of the lead on tracking the changes in water quality. So I'm just going to look at a couple of the pieces in more detail that make up the accountability framework to get to reasonable assurance. So one is most mercury comes from air depositions from sources outside Oregon. I think 46%, yeah, 49% comes from Asia. From land to water bodies through erosion and runoff. So as a result, the primary strategy that DEQ is moving forward with for non-point source is reduce erosion of sediment and runoff into water. The TMDL calls for 80 to 96% reduction of total mercury needed. So again, if you look at the TMDL allocations, today they get divvied up, like I talked about earlier, to point sources and then to non-point sources. And my focus today is on non-point TMDL implementation. And we call them TMDL implementation plans, but I like to call them water quality improvement plans, stormwater riparian protection plans. So if you look currently from the 2006 TMDL, 91% of the cities, counties, state agencies, special districts were already implementing and doing this work on the ground. I added a little point to this slide of new, just for Yamhill alone, you make up 9% of that. There's 2 cities already implementing because with the 2006, they were discharging their wastewater treatment plant to the main stem Willamette. That's Newburgh and Dundee. And then the remaining are new cities, and then you have Yamhill County. And then this is the first TMDL that we brought in the actual water conveyance districts. And there's about 3 in the Yamhill. And 2 I've already identified as not needing a plan because they're drinking water as opposed to delivery of water for agriculture. So in terms of plan development, the rule even goes into detail about that by rule you're required, or if you're a designated management agency, to develop, revise, and implement what we call the TMDL plan or water quality improvement plan. The timeline, which if cities are listening in, they received a letter and you have 18 months to prepare that plan. Again, DEQ must approve it, and it is an adaptive approach. You implement it and revise it every 5 years. The TMDL rule also talks about you have to identify the management strategies to implement that are outlined in the water quality management plan. You have to come up with your timelines that you're going to implement the strategies and give updates on how you're meeting those strategies as you're moving forward. The performance monitoring periodic review is annual reports of progress, as well as a more detailed 5-year review documenting progress over 4 previous years. And then anything you have to do on the ground, you have to make sure it complies with land use laws, which I'm sure you're all familiar with that, more familiar with that than I am. And then the water quality management plan goes into detail, also some other analyses that you have to implement. So again, it was issued in March 2021. You have 18 months. In September 2022, your plan is due. A lot of the cities have already contacted me. I've contacted them. And I hope and I look forward to working with all of you before September 2022. The other thing that the water quality management does is it outlines what measures need to be implemented. And these are really high level and generic, but they're really stormwater management and riparian planning to reduce the erosion and sediment runoff. So you're looking at measures like riparian protection, pollution prevention, and how you operate. Maybe when you do your own construction projects in a city, you're protecting, you put in the practices to reduce erosion while you're doing construction. If someone's implementing a project and a mudslide's going into the water, that you have illicit discharge detection program in place to work with that person to explain why they need to reduce the runoff. Also, when you're building, in some cases you need a permit through DEQ, in other cases not, less than an acre. You'd want to prevent erosion. And then post-construction refers to the attenuating flows of stormwater runoff. So if you build 10 new houses, you're going to have more runoff. Control that water. So when it hits the water body, it gets rid of some of the sediment prior to, and it doesn't have a lot of flow, causing erosion at the outtake. And then the public education and outreach involvement is a key piece. So again, I talked about how it's an adaptive management approach. So you have to implement all these things, but it's not tomorrow. It's not next year for everything. You have 18 months to do pollution prevention and good housekeeping from the issuance date. There is because some of you or all of you mostly are new to this, when I work with you independently, we'll be figuring out what timeline really works best for you. And that would be for the ones that are due as soon as you submit your plan in 18 months in September. So 1 and 2 here on this slide. And this is just specific to counties. I didn't include the city ones because those have a longer list. Enforcement of prohibited pollutants, you have 3 years if you're a county. In this case, there's only one county, that's Yamhill. And construction, 4.5 years. So again, I really want to emphasize, the date of issuance was March on September 2022. Based on discussion, you may not have to have this full-blown public education and outreach program in place. Most, like I said, 91% of the cities already have plans in place and are doing this. You're new to this. And then another piece that talks about other analyses identified in a water quality management plan is public involvement. So especially if you're going to implement an ordinance, you need money, you need budget. All that involves your councils, your commissioners, your residents, right? You have to decide together. And when you do submit your plan, you have to identify how financially you're going to implement it. And I like to emphasize that, again, DEQ has to approve these plans. So when we approve these, you've identified your budget and we assume you have that money to implement it. So, you're accountable for implementing that plan. But again, it is an adaptive plan. And those kind of details we'll deal with more one-on-one as we develop plans and get ready for implementation. I pulled this slide out of a Willamette TMDL survey we did for a 5-year review in 2018. This represents 53% of the Willamette cities and counties that are already implementing. just to give you a kind of feel for how the funding piece worked since the 2006. And they're going into the third cycle now from 2006. So you could see in 2014, 80% had identified, and this was the first 5-year review, that they had funding limitations and they were seeking ways to find more funds. In 2020, that's lower, it's 60%. People did find some solutions. But I do want to emphasize, they also documented, there is still a little under 60% people still trying to get monies and work out solutions to implement their plans. So you could see partner and collaboration is really critical. Some have increased stormwater fees, others used the general water, street, and in-kind donations and bond measures. For post-construction, many cities and counties develop system development charges. So when new growth comes in, they account for that, and then grants. So again, tomorrow, I hope cities are on the line and hopefully they're participating. We have one in May 25th, June 1st, and June 8th. The last being probably, you can attend all these, but in terms of getting a plan together, probably tomorrow is the most important for cities, and then June 1st for county. But the other ones are definitely a learning opportunity if you're interested in knowing what other folks are doing. And again, if you have any questions, I am here. Email me, call me. I'll be following the workshop. I'll be contacting people. I didn't want to steal the audience from the workshop. I don't give the workshop, so I'm letting them give it, and then I'll be calling folks. And then we do have some guidance, and I did send a PDF. If you're more than welcome to share that, obviously, if you want to go online and look at some guidance. And then if you have any questions, again, this is really high level, and I look forward to working with you more one-on-one, each city and county, to work with you on a plan that will work for you.
Great, thank you very much, Nancy. So this is, I've been thinking about this and reading about it, so I finally actually understand what Nancy's talking about. And I know that some of the city operators here are probably much more familiar. Are there any questions specifically to what Nancy has presented? And this can be from anybody from city operators to, we have soil water conservation district and conservation folks here, as well as concerned citizens. So opening the floor to questions for Nancy, for me, and for other operators. It looks like we have Mayor Ryan Lehman from the city of Amity.
Okay.
Hi, Nancy. I guess my question is, what is there out there for funding opportunities? Because I know you weren't probably on earlier, but the city of Amity has a very limited budget, and it currently takes 100% of our budget to provide service to begin with. And this is going to be up on top of providing service. And my assumption is to have the plan completed is going to be expensive. And then the implementation part is going to be expensive as well. And so as a small community of, 750 ratepayers, that I think is going to be the biggest problem for my community, is actually doing the study and coming up with the plan and then being able to afford the implementation long-term. So what type of, funding opportunities are out there, I guess, is the biggest thing for us.
So I went over some of the ways cities, I gave you that slide. That's what everyone reported. So, I mean, it looks easy, but no, it's not, right? Because stormwater fees means you have to charge residents. That's the list I can provide. There's not really any for plan development. DEQ doesn't have any money to give cities other than I will sit down with you and help you get a plan. Some of the cities I've already talked to are hiring a consultant to get theirs done. I see that they're using consultants that are already familiar with other cities that are doing this. But I will work with you one-on-one. What I like to do when I sit down with cities and counties is, and you'll be surprised, we sit down and I look at a checklist with you and say, what on this list are you already doing? And you'd be surprised what you're doing and how it pertains to this program. And again, it is scalable by city size. The bigger you are, the more you have to do. The bigger you are, the sooner you have to do it. So with that said, I don't know enough about your city, but I can guarantee you you're doing something. And I do encourage collaboration. You could see that was a big one for cities. One way is if you have issues with your drinking water and you get a drinking, say a water loan, there's opportunities for implementation to do some nice projects, because this kind of work is protecting your drinking water source. So you could collaborate internally yourself, or you can also work with other cities. I know like in say like the North Saniam, they share kind of outreach and cleanups, and they take turns and do it that way. So that's like the simple level. A lot of times if you're doing a project, again, I'm really going to emphasize collaboration. You know, can you help a project upstream of your drinking water or within your city that someone else is working on? What could you provide? And it could be as simple as hosting a meeting, helping them host an outreach meeting at your city council, right? There's creativity. So yes, this is everyone's concern about monies. And I think before you get too nervous, let's sit down and, you know, one-on-one. And I am more than glad if anyone wants me to come to a council meeting and talk in more detail. Obviously, it's going to be virtual. When I did this before, I actually physically went there. So it might be a little different, but yeah.
But Nancy, it sounds like there are ways to both do outreach and implement that may already be folded into what cities are already doing, right?
And looking at
or working together.
Like a lot of cities are already cleaning their streets, right? That's a best management practice. You likely have a nuisance ordinance if someone's dumping in a river, right? Or a resource to go to help you stop that.
Right, that's super helpful, I think. Thank you. Hopefully it's helpful for Mayor Lehman too.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to note that Brian Burnham unmuted himself, and then we have a hand raised from Barbara Boyer. So Brian is from the City of Carleton's water, City of Carleton Water, and then we have Barbara Boyer from the Soil Water Conservation District. Brian, are you ready?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. So in regards to fish affected in the lower Willamette, you were saying the pike minnow, and what was the other one?
Oh, the bass. I was saying the pike minnow just accumulates mercury more efficiently in its fat tissue compared to a bass. So the TMDL calls for a higher reduction for pike minnow. So instead of using the lower one, we use 88 for all fish. That's kind of what I was just hinting out. It's a conservative.
So is the mercury level in all the fish that are home to the lower Willamette, or is it also in the anadromous fish?
I am not aware of studies on anadromous fish, the salmon, because they move and they migrate. It's the resident fish that the mercury applies to. But we do have a aquatic life criteria for fish to protect fish also. But this plan is dealing with the sediment and runoff to overall protect water quality. So that's your focus. And the Oregon
So,
Health, oh, sorry.
on runoff, typically right now in the Willamette downstream from our community, Wilsonville water plant is the only water plant in the Willamette from downstream from the city of Carlton. So if drinking waters, how many other municipalities are actually pulling out of the Willamette?
Oh, for surface water, you know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. I know, I think like, I want to say like Amity was just on the phone. I think they use drinking water. Some, I don't know who uses wells versus who uses pooling directly from surface water. I wouldn't know that.
But what I've been hearing though from your agency is that, you know, we need to be concerned about, because this is our drinking water. So there's a lot of communities that the only downstream user is Wilsonville. It actively treats for mercury reduction. As far as the fish goes, I'm a little kind of confused, because pike minnow was actually the only use of those fish was as a reduction of a predator on salmonids. And as far as I know, there's a lot of people in the Portland area that warm water fish in the lower part of the Willamette. And I don't know of any netting going on by any tribal or.
Yeah, I can't answer your questions because, again, my focus isn't on drinking water. We're not looking at what we're pulling and drinking. We're looking at what's actually going into the water that converts to methyl mercury, and then it goes up the little fish and the bigger fish, and then it keeps going up till the person eats the fish. So we are focused on not drinking water. We're focused on discharging into the surface waters.
Okay, and then you also said that most of the mercury is deposited through air, and it's also coming from the Far East. So why are we being saddled with this?
Because it lands on the air and it occurs naturally, and 76% of the surface runoff from urban contributes to the mercury TMDL. I mean, I could see it's coming from the air, and why you're like, oh, why do I have to do something? But we're looking at what we can do, and erosion and sediment release the mercury into the water for it to convert to methyl mercury and work its way up the food chain. And we're looking at where we can control it.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I'm going to go with Barbara Boyer has her hand raised, and then we've got Gary Vanderveen from Yamhill County Public Health, who's also unmuted himself. So Barbara, and thank you, Nancy, for taking questions.
Yeah.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks a lot for your presentation today. I've been following this for about a year. Every quarter, we get an update from Gene Foster at our Soil and Water Conservation Commission meeting.
Okay.
So I've been following this for quite a while. I'm curious if I know our 319 funds are pretty low because of this, the TMDLs. I'm wondering if 319 money would be available for implementation of these plans when they're done.
To be eligible 319, you need a water-based plan, and there is one in this TMDL, which makes you eligible to apply. But like you said, we got our money pooled, but yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And then Casey, one question for you quickly. Who's going to be the lead at the county on this?
I was gonna call on Director Lago to answer that one, but before, as far as I understand, it's been tasked both to Planning Department and to Public Works, and we'll see in the sausage making what happens. But can you, could Nancy or Barbara, can you do the plain version, the plain English version of what the 319 is?
Oh, sure.
319. We're like way up here.
Oh. It's a grant funding source that DEQ administers. EPA gives us that money every year, and it gets divvied up amongst the regions. And then the soil water districts, watershed councils, cities can apply for that money. It's a grant. And you need 60% match, federal, non-federal. And that's where, if you're going to apply for a grant, collaboration would be a good alternative, because you need that match, like in kind. So the soil water districts utilize that money in the past. I'm guessing Yamhill, you guys use it for pesticide stewardship, right? And have you?
Yes.
And yeah, so.
Awesome.
Okay,
thank
hold
you.
on. And I have,
Okay, go.
and thank you, Nancy. One more, I have actually a couple comments. So the 2006 plans that are being implemented now are available online for people to view, correct?
Those are not on, there are some online, but anyone asking for one that I work with, I can make those available. So.
Okay, I just wanted cities to know that they're available to look at to be helpful as they start down this path.
Yes, and when I start working with them, I'll send them examples and scalable to the size of the city.
And then I really have a hard time with this, the reduction, the 85 to 96% reduction, when 49% of it is coming from out of our country. I just have such a hard time with those
Everyone
numbers.
does. And Brian, feel free to call me. People are frustrated
yeah,
with that number, but it's what we can, I always tell people, it doesn't mean we don't do anything, right?
Right. So. All right, thanks, Nancy.
All right, thank you, Nancy. And then to Barbara, we'll see, I believe Director Lago is still with us. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll down the list. Director Lago, do you want to add anything as far as the counties? Who's responsible at the county now?
I'd have to talk with Ken Huffer about who's going to be doing that lead. I bet it's going to be, like you said, myself and Mr. Friday.
As I said, I recognize Mark's name.
All right.
I've spoken with Mark. So.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And that's good to hear and good to see. So the city of Amity is next with a hand raise, and then I go to Gary Vanderveen after that.
Yeah, I just had a question to throw out there, is that we have all these small cities just starting up with these plans, and it sounds like we have help. So where does the line of responsibility fall? Because the county will be in charge, or DMA, or however they will be an agency that is dependent on these small cities doing their work. So where does the line of responsibility fall when we're coming up with our individual plan, and then the county will also have a plan?
Your jurisdiction is within your city boundaries, and where you can work with issues in your cities, parks, residents, and then you have that urban kind of boundary, right, where the county falls in. And I don't know how you combine that role together. I'm guessing the county and you would try to figure that out together. I'm guessing, do they do through intergovernmental agreements, do work for you, like roads? Or I don't know enough. I haven't met with all the cities, but you're only responsible within your jurisdiction. So.
And then as a follow-up question to that, we have the large Willamette Basin that we're all looking out for. And then there's also multiple watersheds in Yamhill County. Mm-hmm. And that makes a difference of where water is flowing, where you're testing it, where our runoff goes. How did those play into these plans when we all have an independent plan, but our water is all sourcing two different places? And then where is it tested throughout the Willamette Basin that would show that our work is making progress or not?
So let me answer your first one. The mercury TMDL is basin wide, so it includes 12 subbasins: the Yamhill, the Middle, Clackamas, the whole Willamette. So it's basin wide. And your other question was, so it's not looking at individual rivers or streams. It's not really where you are. It's that it ends up in the Willamette, which is the main stem. So does that make sense? So in terms of seeing if we're making progress, we use what we call a substitute for the mercury, which is a total suspended solid value. And we've predicted out 30 years what it should be during high flows of water. So, and we measure the measurement will be at the mouth of the Huck 8 subbasin, which is Yamhill, Clackamas, Moala Pudding, for the total suspended solid value. The strategies you'll be implementing on the ground are known to reduce sediment. At this time, we're not asking like the city of Amity to sample and look at water. We're saying if you educate people about protecting water and what sediment does. You look at illicit discharge, municipal operations, you run your trucks well, you clean your streets. We know those work at reducing sediment. So we're not asking you to measure anything at this time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so just to clarify, we're collaborating together. We're all coming up with the best plans we have, given the information we have. And with these reviews, we're hoping to make a significant difference with well-implemented plans. And that's what it comes down to at this point.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about how it's an adaptive management approach. Every 5 years, you update your plan, you see how water's doing. So it's not like you're gonna do it for 10 years. It's gonna be 30, 40. I mean, it's indefinite that we need to protect water.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah, Nancy, I think that between the questions and your answer, I at least feel a lot more comfortable with kind of what's being expected and asked of cities and the county. That what good practices are. Here's a wide range of them. Implement them. We'll lower total dissolved solids, and then DEQ will be measuring total dissolved solids, and we'll be able to see how it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great.
So where you can make a difference within your jurisdiction, that's really what this is talking about.
Great.
And then you are collaborating. So, and it's all of the individual plans that are ultimately making the bigger difference when it leaves the Yamhill and enters the Willamette.
Right. And Gary Vanderveen from Yamhill County Public Health also has a question or a comment.
I just have a couple answers to questions that weren't directly.
Gary, you're super low. I don't know if other people can hear you. I can barely hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's very soft, but it's better than before.
Sorry, I'm working with an interesting system. So answers to some questions from the gentleman from Wilsonville. There are no cities in Yamhill County that pull directly from the Willamette. And then the concern with mercury is it's bioaccumulative. So you've got the smaller fish that the bigger fish eat, and then we eat the bigger fish, and the natural bodies do not expel the mercury. So it's not being pushed out of the biological system, and it ends up getting into us eventually.
Yes, thank you, Gary. And the Oregon Health Authority has the website on where the listings are. Again, the goal of the mercury TMDL is to meet the standard for fish tissue so people can eat fish.
That sounds great. Thank you. And then since we have tribal partners on the call, Nancy, are the tribes and those reservation also responsible? I confess that I don't know the answer to this one.
They work with EPA directly. We don't work with, we work with the tribe and we do things on the ground, we collaborate. They helped get the new, mercury criterion established. But in terms of we talked about 319 and I would let them speak. I don't know what they're not a government. They're like their own, I can't speak to that, but yeah, they work directly with EPA, but they work with us too. So
Sounds
I'd
good.
be
It
happy
looks
to
like,
speak to that a little bit.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
please.
Perfect.
So Kathleen George here again with the tribe. Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, generally speaking, as unique entities, we do coordinate directly with EPA. However, you're quite right. We also work together as partners all the time. And so what I don't know and what I should find out is, if there's been that staff to staff level coordination, but I remember you offering to share those best management practices kind of level plans with folks. And so if you could shoot one of those to me, then that way, it could be that coordination has already happened and I'm just not aware of it. But that way I will have it and I'll be able to pass it on to the right people. So would certainly appreciate that, and appreciate your mentioning that because tribal people do eat a lot of fish, and they tend to eat much more fish from their local streams and rivers than folks in the general population. The tribe has worked with DEQ and EPA to say that these human health protection standards, they really are appropriate. They really are important. And again, if tribal members and where studies have been done eat orders of magnitude of more fish from their local streams and rivers, then when we have a situation like excess mercury in the streams, those levels of contamination, because of the bioaccumulation that was mentioned, can actually become threatening to human health. So we do know that this is a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone who has large facilities to manage, and we do too. But we definitely want to work with everyone and be part of the solution. So thank you.
So who needed the list of best management practices?
Well, if you just send it directly to me, Kathleen.george@grandron.org, I'm on the list for the meeting. I'll just make sure it gets to our correct public works folks. Thank you.
And I think some of them might be on the email too, but it's great hearing the connection. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Councillor George. It was really good to hear the perspective on the bigger need for the mercury management plans. Appreciate it. It's 11:42. Nancy may be with us for a few more minutes, but I want to open the floor to other folks who maybe aren't regulated entities, but have a concern or an interest in sediment in the water, mercury in the water. So there still are folks here on the call. And you can raise your hand if you have a question or a comment. All right, it looks like we got Gary Vandereen again. Go, Gary.
All right, let's see is this a little better?
It sounds great to me.
Okay, good. I do have a question for DEQ through EPA. Is there some type of goal to do international treaty with Asia to try and engineer these problems out so that we don't have to deal with them at some point?
I can't answer that question. I do not know, honestly. Sorry.
Right,
I mean, if you look at the US, like the Northeast states are working together to reduce it, and there are things happening across borders. The specifics, I do not know.
Yeah, because it's mainly dirty coal that's causing this problem.
And Gary, there's to Nancy's comment, there is in at least one of the TMDL plans, there's a projection forward through time, and that projection indicates a reduction in deposition, so in accumulation in our soil, but I don't recall the specifics of it. Nancy, do you know what I'm talking about?
I didn't work on that piece. I'm sorry. I could
vaguely remember reading a little bit of that, but yeah,
that's okay. It's fairly early on in the like the really big document that I can pull up and send everybody to.
Yeah, it would be nice to engineer it out rather than having to do post-administrative control to keep it out of the rivers.
Yes.
But immediately what's going to work is this solution. So
yeah, well, yeah. Build some
So-
swamp areas with some plants and trap it.
Gary, can you provide more details about that? I know that you come from a dairy family, so you know how to build swamps and trap them, but so you have a unique perspective in the community. Do you want to share that? I mean, best practices, right?
Ideally, and I'm also from a farming background, so I know you want to use as much land as possible, but ideally you would have a riparian zone between your property and the river that would just soak up the mercury, or use plants in your fields that would soak up the mercury and hold it rather than let it release. But it's easier said than to do in practice.
All right, thank you, Gary. You know, soil water conservation also has experience with the erosion component. It is different with cities and the county though, because you know we have roads that are a very long field that needs to have perhaps a similar action taken on them. So, but Nancy has directed us to best practices, which will be super helpful for the cities and the county. All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Thomas Hoskins has a hand raised.
I think he's on mute. Is he on mute?
Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen?
I do not mind. Nancy may have to drop her screen off.
Oh, okay.
So I want to talk a little bit about the funding that NRCS has available to do a lot of these water quality projects in a certain focused area. We've put forward a request that's called a conservation implementation strategy. And this has solely to do with reduction in erosion, putting vegetated buffers along roadways or riparian areas. And we just put in a request for $200,000 a year for about $1 million over the course of the next 5 years. And that can go up or down depending on, let me see here. I put it on my screen here. Let's see here. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
I can see your screen, or yes.
Okay. So can you see the map?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so what you see here is Yamhill County, and our focus area is everything here in the green. So that would be the South Yamhill. We have written a conservation implementation strategy to deal with reduction in erosion along roads, along riparian areas, and then erosion reduction actually out in the fields of the ag field. So if you have orchards that are having a lot of bare ground, we have cost share to help plant perennial cover and do cover cropping. We also have some irrigation improvement funds to do those kinds of things. So it's not necessarily relevant to cities. These will result in a net decrease in pollutants that enter the waterway. So we do have funds available to do these kinds of things. And if cities want to do outreach, or if cities have a targeted focus area, or they have an area that they really want to be watching, that there are some funds available to do these kinds of practices. And we also have another county-wide cost share to do cover crops and conservation cover, so grass planting anywhere in the whole county underneath orchards or vineyards. That Marie Vixta with the Soil and Water Conservation District, that's a funding pool that she requested. And so your federal partners and your Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District does have a lot to offer as far as making improvements to water quality. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that we do have things out available.
Awesome, Thomas. And how would people get a hold of you on that?
You can email me, you can Google NRCS, just Google NRCS and Yamhill County, and we'll come right up. As we have a great website. You can click on our website with an interactive map that shows kind of what we have available and where we have it available. So I just tell people, Google Oregon NRCS and you will find us. We'll be there. You can either look in they have a phone book or a directory. Or you can
Okay,
email
great.
directly.
Nancy, did you have any thoughts or comments on this? You were still unmuted, so.
Just that, Department of Agriculture regulates the agriculture community, and they work with Thomas and Marie to implement their best management practices. So they're all like, that's what Thomas is saying. And it looks like there's potential. Thomas indicates for some collaboration there, maybe for some of the cities.
This is a collaborative effort actually with the Oregon Department of Agriculture. They have what's called the strategic implementation area, which is everything here in the red, where they're going to be doing advanced levels of monitoring, they're reaching out to landowners who have a problem, a visible problem. They're going to reach out to landowners. So we are working collaboratively with the Oregon Department of Agriculture.
Yeah. Right, and I would add, Thomas, that farmers, landowners, foresters who can get paid for implementing soil erosion practices will be able to, in theory, basically help the flow out of the end, that total suspended solids, which helps the cities and the counties with meeting theirs too, in a way.
Right, absolutely. And
Okay,
fences are a part of it. Doing livestock type practices are also a part of it as well. So any sort of soil erosion reduction practices are going to be a part of this conservation strategy.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much for showing us that map. All right, it's 11:51. I have a hard stop at noon, but we can get a lot done in 9 minutes. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And we will all be talking with you a lot more.
Yeah, and if someone still has questions, feel free, you have my contact. If you want to get into the weeds more with me, I'd be more than glad to. And I'll send the best management practice. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nancy. Okay, in our last 8 minutes of this, I want to open the floor to folks to answer the question, what's the one water issue of most concern to you, either in your city, on your farm, your forest, where you live, or the county as a whole? And don't be shy, but be brief if you can, and tell me your name when you raise your hand or unmute yourself, please.
Hi there. I'm Melody. This is Yvonne. We're in Newburgh on Highway 240 and Red Hills Road. And the Chehalem Creek runs the back of our property. It goes right through it. And we are directly in back of the Willamette hazelnut growers farm, Ben Mitchell's place. So we're going to have a meeting with them soon. They have been pumping in the middle directly behind our house, 40,000 gallons out of that Chehalem Creek. There are many people that have water rights up and down, and there have been too many issued. Last year, for the first time in the 18 years my mom has owned this property, this creek went bone dry, killed thousands of trout, crawdads, the beavers have moved. So we're 2 months out from when the creek went completely dry last year, and it's May 10th today. So they've had their pumps running. Going to be meeting with Michael and Ben hopefully soon, so they can actually see what's going on with our auxiliary pump that also is creating a lot of noise issues at our house. Anyhow, the main concern is the water. Our groundwater levels are reducing, and we're about 2 weeks away from this Chehalem Creek being completely dried up for this year. It's very concerning due to fire season. The animals, the wildlife, and everyone, the forest, everyone else who has agriculture up and down the Chehalem Creek. So it's really concerning. It's about to go dry. Like I said, I'm down in our backyard in the forest almost every single day. I have pictures for the last 2 years, and it is absolutely frightening. So I can't wait to meet with them. They insisted this morning that, they require the water. I said, I get this. I said, however, I think you need to see what the environmental impact is right now of you running this thing nonstop for basically about a week. And I mean, on Mother's Day, my goodness, Mother's Day, really? Come on, give us a break so we can enjoy our property too maybe make a little money on our property because we're going to be doing weddings and events here. Anyhow, that's it. Just be aware, and maybe no more water rights being issued because there's too many and it's going dry and it's killing our wonderful wildlife and environment out here. We're only 2 miles from town. We're at Red Hills Road and 240, just to give you all an idea. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for putting this on.
Melody, thank you for your patience too, to wait to the end to give your pitch.
Oh yeah. Well, I think people need to know. So whoever would like to come out and take a look at this, we're here. Come check out our creek. Come check out what's going on. I mean, it's real and it's frightening what's going on right now. And so I'll give you the address, 21315 Northeast Highway 240. We are at Red Hills Road and 240, White Colonial, Tree Line Drive. Come on in and say hi. This is my mom, Yvonne. She owns the property. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melody and Yvonne. It's good to have you with us.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Other voices, other folks, you want to jump in and say a few words? A lot of people have been patient while we've gone through our main agenda. What's the thing that's most concerning or most interest you? Mayor Watkins?
You knew I wouldn't keep my mouth shut the whole time. Commissioner Kula, I just want to say thank you. This has been really, it's been wonderful. It's wonderful to hear from all of the cities in the county and what's going on everywhere. And anyhow, yeah, just basically thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I was ready to write something down.
No, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to mute myself and leave you alone. Thank you.
All right, that sounds good. I do like to note too that we have both the McMinnville Chamber of Commerce and the Newburgh Chamber of Commerce present too. So I would be curious to hear, I'm going to call you out. Do you have water concerns? Are there water concerns that are brought to you by your member businesses? Joshua Duder.
Thanks, Commissioner Kula. Right now I'm listening in mostly from my participation or the Chamber's participation in urban growth boundary discussions and SDC discussions in our city limits. I'm just curious I'm just intaking information, but we'll be getting feedback from my executive committee about their perspective on how that affects businesses. Water in, water out infrastructure in the city of Newburgh. We have a really good relationship with the city of Newburgh, but that's our primary concern as a Chamber of Commerce. But of course, listening on the conversation about Willamette hazelnut growers, they are a chamber member. So I'd be interested in hearing how that conversation goes. And if there is anything that we can do to facilitate a further conversation with them. And as we get further down the road, possibilities on helping them change their practices or listening to how their practices are required for them. And, you know, not much I can do today, but just good to be here and listen in.
Well put, Josh. Thank you. And Joya. And then we have Kathleen George, Councilor George as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for putting this together. Certainly a very interesting conversation. You know, McMinnville, we've got Mac Water and Light, and they're fabulous and awesome. So frankly, I have not heard any complaints about what's happening with our water. You know, there is concern that, you know, we've got, you know, if we do have a drought, we've got our reservoir. And so I think that's really, I think they do a great job managing, and I haven't heard anybody say that there's an issue there. I was concerned, however, hearing about the mercury levels and those requirements. And, you know, a lot of it is out of our control because it's coming from elsewhere. And I was really appreciative of Gary Vanderveen, his comments, because, you know, it's hard to control what other people are doing. So that does raise a concern. And I appreciate, you know, just hearing the information today. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Joya. And then Kathleen, Councilor George.
Thanks very much, Hayumasi, for giving us the chance to just jump in here. I guess one issue that's a policy priority for the tribe is simply our ongoing concerns about our salmonid populations, you know, throughout the Yamhill River and the greater Willamette. And so I think folks know that the tribe's culture, we're salmon people. and our culture is interwoven with the life of the salmon, but in many parts of the Willamette Basin and in several parts of the Yamhill Basin, our native salmonid populations are in desperate danger. And folks here have mentioned a wide variety of reasons, from flows to temperature to other pollutants. So I guess what we would just like to say is that we want to keep that as a clear priority, certainly on behalf of the tribe, but also if there's other partners working throughout the basin who ever need like letters of support because they're doing a riparian restoration project, or they're replacing undersized culverts, or, you know, they're changing the way ditch management works, any of those sorts of things. If we can ever be helpful in terms of supporting those projects, you know, please reach out and let us know, because of course we know it takes all of us working together. So I just wanted to not leave this call without mentioning that, in case there's a way in which we can support anybody else's work. So Hayumasi, thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor George. And I do know that Director Lago from Yamhill County Public Works has been working and thinking about, especially with culvert replacements, how can we gain more fish access? So, and that's thanks to a lot of the people who are actually on this call, getting that focus.
Undersized culvert replacement or poorly placed culvert replacement can be absolutely huge. So again, if you're looking for partners, we're happy to talk. Thanks, everyone.
And there's also the lamprey as well, right? So
absolutely. And we're happy to, again, support any efforts that will enhance those populations. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any last closing thoughts? All right, our next meeting will have a focus on groundwater data and the lack of data and where the data is, water quality and quantity, and what we can do about it, and then regulation at both the state and the county levels. But we will also hopefully talk about salmonids as well. Thank you all for joining me. Send me emails if you have either resources or you have further questions, and I can make sure to connect you, and we'll work on getting these projects funded as best we can and addressing the mercury. All right, thank you all very much, and I'll see all of you at some point.